And Mike, I do have a couple readings picked out, short readings. So if you ask a question or it fits in at some point, I'll say.
We can make that happen.
Yeah, there's just a few short things that
I think I remember our discussion about how we were going to do this.
Yeah, I think it seems appropriate.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So good to see you here. Oh, thank you. Thanks.
I had the book sent through Amazon UK to my friend.
Oh,
she got it before I did.
Oh, you're kidding me.
So
cheaper.
When are we going to talk?
When are we what?
When are we going to talk about?
I don't know. Whenever you want.
Okay, sometime this week.
I'll do a little wave to her.
Oh, I have to do one more.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh,
She'll love having
thank
a
you
photo.
for sending it to
A
her.
big fan.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Joe leaves the night of the 15th.
So this week, if there's, I think in only half an hour would be enough to just have a conversation. So we just find a time, we'll look and make that. Okay. Good. We're looking forward to it. Yeah. Here we go.
Oh, and then when you talk, I'm gonna give you something. So like it can, yep. We'll do that right at the end. I think we could do it at the end of you talking now, and then it'll be kind of a transition in. So that sound good? I'll stand up and then okay. Yep. Yeah, I don't know if you tell there's a couple. I don't know if there's.
There are some seats at the front. I know everybody wants to hide in the back. We have some seats in the front, and there are a few scattered. Apologies for the uncomfortable airplane layout here, but we were concerned about traffic flow, so we kind of squished you all in the middle. We'll just do a minute here or so while people finish picking up their books. Again, if you didn't get a chance to get your book just now before the start of the event, you can do that as soon as the interview and question and answers have ended, and then Eowyn will be signing, and you'll be able to pick up your book then as well. So I think we're ready to get rolling. First off, welcome. Thank you all for coming. We're excited to see so many people here on a Tuesday afternoon. So we have to give full credit for this event to Eowyn because it was her idea. Not only did she write the great book, but when she had finished the book and was ready to do the book launch, and it was supposed to be on a Tuesday, it was supposed to be next week, and somebody told her, well, the depot is taken by the library on Tuesday, she said, wouldn't it be great if we got together with the library and did a fundraising event? So we are incredibly grateful to Eowyn for that. Also, big thanks to Mike Chmielewski and Big Cabbage Radio. Mike has come to do the interview portion of our program here, and also is streaming the event so that people who were not able to attend live are able to hear it and share it as well. So big thanks to Mike and to Big Cabbage. Good job. And then just a few other notes on sponsors for the event. We do have one keg was donated by 203 Kombucha, and then another keg of kombucha was donated by one of the Friends of the Library. So this one is Rooibos Rhubarb. And I'm totally a kombucha novice, but I did try it. It's great. So there was that. And also, I got stuck tapping the keg, which is something I literally have never done before in my life. I got directions, and I followed them, and it seems to be working okay, but if it doesn't, you can come for me. So we do have that for afterwards, and then we also have coffee that was provided by Alaska Artisan Coffee, and we're also getting some, I believe, from Farm Loop for the evening session, so thanks to them. And we have, for the evening session, I'm sorry that you guys are going to miss out, but for the evening session, we have Bleeding Heart Brewery donated a keg of beer. So you can come back. I won't tell anybody if you come back for a second session. Okay. And of course, we wouldn't be doing this either without Fireside Books and their cooperation in getting the books here, which was a bit of a drama, but they did show up in time. So all of you who pre-ordered a book or wanted to buy one have been able to do so, and we are incredibly grateful to Fireside for coming and helping us and co-host the event. Thank you. For those interested in the news of the library, we are coming up on our 2-year anniversary of the roof collapse. We are still collecting money. So the role of the Friends as the nonprofit service provider for the library, our job is to collect money and to demonstrate to the grant holding companies that are going to give grants, hopefully, to the library, that we can match their funding. So we've raised, in the last almost 2 years, we've raised right around $100,000, which is good, but of course we need more. Everything that's coming in now is going to that new building fund. So that's what all of the donations that you have generously given thus far, and should you choose to give any more, we do have a couple of spots out by the kombucha and the other places. So if you didn't donate enough at the door, you could always donate more. So all of that coming in is going to the new library, and again, we are just incredibly grateful, as always, for everybody's support. The library is limping along, as many of you know, in its temporary location, but we would like to be able to have a real library up and running again. And again, if you have any strong thoughts about that, please express them to the City Council. We appreciate that. So on that note, Eowyn did generously donate $1 out of every pre-order from Fireside to the Friends of the Library.
Yep, that's what I've got right here. I don't know if I think this mic's working, maybe. I think my lapel mic is working, yeah. So yeah, there was almost 300 pre-orders at Fireside Books, and my family and I talked about it, and we're actually giving you a check for $1,000.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I mean, I have to say that the truth of the matter is putting on something like this would have cost me a lot of money and time, and you guys did so much. I mean, I hardly had to do anything except for sweat getting the books. The books got here on time. The books came this afternoon at 12:30 is when they arrived. So everybody at Fireside Books was all just keeping their fingers crossed so they arrived. But anyways, I just want to encourage you all to, if you haven't already, really consider donating to the library. It was that's where I learned to fall in love with reading, was at the Palmer Library. And when I first moved here, when my family moved here, it was in the old City Hall, in the basement of the City Hall. So this, to me, was the new library, the one that the roof collapsed on. And I just feel like it's so important to show to the City Council, to our community, how important libraries are. And by giving a little bit of money, that's one way to do it. So, and thank you so much, Prudence, and to everyone at Friends of the Library for helping put this all together. It's really wonderful.
Okay, so with that, we will begin the second portion of our program. We have Mike who's going to interview Eowyn. There will be a short time afterwards for audience questions and answers, and then you'll be able to have some refreshments and get your book signed.
Thank you. Can you all hear us out there? Okay, sounds good. I'm going to ask you 3 questions to begin. The first question, how many of you, and raise your hand if you answer yes, how many of you knew Eowyn before she became a well-known author?
No.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. A second question, how many of you read her first book? Whoa. Well, obviously, thank you. How many of you read, well, you haven't read it yet, or have you?
Well, I have
a few people have read this, and I've been privileged to have an advanced copy as well. You're in for a treat. This is billed as something of an interview, but really it's a conversation. I've known Eowyn as well for a long time, and over the years, we've done what we do at the radio station, is have conversation with people so that they can tell their story. And in this case, we recently interviewed Eowyn. It's up on our website, Big Cabbage Radio. So if you want that interview as well about just this process for writing. So obviously we're not going to give away the book and discuss the book. We're going to have a conversation, and then afterwards, if we've missed something, you can fill in the blanks by all means, ask questions, and there'll be time to get answers. So Eowyn, this is the 3rd book, but do we say it's the third book in a series, or how is it different than the other two?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. It isn't a series, it's a standalone, each one of totally a standalone book. But I will say that if you have read The Snow Child, and thank you all so much for reading my books and being here and being a part of this celebration with the community. But if you've read The Snow Child or To the Bright Edge of the World, you'll know that it was set on this kind of imaginary river, the Wolverine River, right, with a landscape that I kind of created so I could have my own rules so that someone wouldn't say, well, the Matanuska doesn't have a bend right there. So I could do whatever I wanted. And this new book is set on that same Wolverine River, but this one's a more modern novel, and I will say too, it's a darker novel. It's more modern, and I think it's going to be in ways a harder read in terms of some of the subject matter. But I also have been hearing that it's also probably my most suspenseful book. So that's just to kind of give you a taste of what it is a little bit that way.
The title. There seems to be a contrast. Black woods, blue sky. Where did that come from?
Yeah, so the title was a thing. I'll tell you that right now. So it was originally going to be called The Bear, but some of you that read a lot will know that Julia Phillips came out with a book called Bear that came out just a few months ago from my same publisher, Random House. So my editor came back to me and said, we can't call it The Bear or A Bear or anything with bear. So then for a little while it was Bear Story. So some of you might have seen online, if I was starting to promote it, it was going to be called Bear Story. And my agent hated that title. I will just point that out. He thought it was a terrible title. And Random House took it out to their sales and marketing team, and they did not like the title either. And I'm not good at titles. This is not my forte. And so it was going round and around. And then thankfully, a very smart man, the publisher at Random House, Andy Ward, was looking at the book, and I have a quote from Proust in it that talks about the black woods and the blue sky. And it was just the perfect title, because I think it's about finding hope, of maybe being lost in a dark woods, metaphorically speaking, and being able to look up and see the blue sky. And it really fits, I think, what I was trying to express in the book.
There are many characters in the book. And I was fascinated as they grew older, evolved over time. Is there anything that you would say was more tied to you as one of those characters than the others? Yeah,
absolutely, and that's a great question too. So there's a little girl in the story, Emmeline. So that to give you a little bit, some of you might have already read the inside cover a little bit. So the basic storyline is a young single mother in Alaska, kind of in the 1980s, works at a roadside lodge, and she becomes interested in this man, this sort of recluse. But she has a 6-year-old daughter, Emmeline, and Emmeline by far is the most autobiographical character I've ever written. And I think that's why, to be honest, I'm the most nervous about this book of the other two. That, The Snow Child, when it came out, it was just a complete surprise, everything that happened with the book. I didn't have time to be nervous in a sense. And To the Bright Edge of the World, I felt like, okay, I can kind of rest on my laurels a little bit. It doesn't matter if this book doesn't do well, however it does is fine. But this one, because it's so close to my heart, because I put kind of my deepest fears and my sense of wonder that I had as a little girl growing up Alaska, all of that is in Emmeline. And so it does feel a little more vulnerable, I think, and I'm more nervous about sharing it with the world.
So that leads maybe to the question of audience. Any particular ideas that you have of the target audience?
Well, I do think that if people have read, either my first or second book, you kind of have an idea of what I do. So I think people, you have to suspend a little disbelief in this, right? You got to just go with me a little. There's going to be some things that happen that aren't going to happen in the world, but in the real world, but in this kind of magical landscape that I've created in all 3 books, it is plausible. So I think that's the biggest hurdle for people who like maybe some more sort of straight literary fiction, is it's got some fantastical elements. And I think that, billing it as a romance, which it's gotten labeled that way a little bit, I don't know that that's accurate. I think you need to watch your expectations about it being a Beauty and the Beast romance that happily ends happily ever after. It might be a little more complicated than that.
In some ways, it's been described as a reimagining of Beauty and the Beast. How accurate would that be?
Yeah, and I feel like that's a complicated thing, and it was me that said that. And I actually recently put up a post on my Instagram and Facebook to try to kind of talk about this, to sort of articulate for the first time my feelings about it, because personally I was very inspired by Beauty and the Beast, but I think when people read it, they have a hard time seeing that connection in ways. But I'll say that it maybe more accurately is me kind of grappling with that fairy tale, you know, wrestling with this idea of, can a quote-unquote beautiful, virtuous woman save a man from a curse? And so I think that's the thing that I'm kind of struggling with, I guess, throughout the book.
Okay. I know that you've selected a couple of passages.
Yeah.
And I know, since most people have not read the book, perhaps it would be the time to read the short passage.
Yeah, I'll just read it real
flavor.
small.
Yeah.
And so this is the change from when Snow Child or To the Bright Edge of the World came out. I need reading glasses now. So but I remembered them. Half the time I don't remember to bring them with me anywhere. So yeah, I think I'll read... I think this gives you a little bit of a taste of maybe, you know, you'll notice on the cover, I have to say too, I don't get much say over the cover art. The Random House, the publishers, do this, but I love this cover. I'm really happy with it. And if you notice, there's a bear standing against a tree, and then his shadow is that of a man. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of where the story is going. And I'm going to read a part. This takes place at a summer solstice party. Those of you who have lived in Alaska for a long time, if you've been to solstice parties, you know what these are about. And a conversation is happening between Birdie, the main character, the young single mother, and this man, Sid, who knows a lot about bears and things. And I just want to read this part about her. So they're sitting around the bonfire in their camp chairs. So Sid sat up and crossed one leg over the other, leaning conspiratorially toward Birdie. You are, he put two thumbs together and flapped them like butterfly wings, off and away. It took her a second to realize that he was talking about her move to the other side of the Wolverine River. Della must have told him. Yeah, I think me and Emmeline, we need a change. We're going to stay with Arthur at his cabin on the North Fork. You've been out there, haven't you, to his place? Sure, Sid said. Here's the thing, though. Nobody says his real name. They're all euphemisms. Did you know that? Barefoot wanderer, four-legged man, golden friend, honey eater, a dark thing. No one wants to call him up with his true name, you see. No one wants to summon him. It scares us. Not just here, all over the world, all down through the ages, we've come up with these secret names. Sid sat up straight. Or right here, standing in front of us, and he's blocking our path. He gestured toward some unseen thing between him and the bonfire. We've got to keep our eyes down and ask him nicely, please move along. Maybe we call the bear our gentle cousin. Gentle cousin. Sid laughter was high-pitched and giggly and always made Birdie smile, even if she didn't understand exactly what was so funny. Please spare us because we're your kin, he said in a mocking high voice. We don't want him to eat us, right? I know what you're thinking. In English, it's bear, right? You know what that means? Brown one. Just the brown one. He laughed and tipped precariously in the lawn chair so that Birdie thought he might topple backwards, but then he came softly back down. If we ever know his true name, it's long forgotten.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So the autobiographical elements you lived through in part in one way or another, and then you went through the process of writing about them. What did that do to inform you about that experience you once had?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I feel like part of what I love about writing is it's a time to kind of, while I'm writing, I'm working through things. I'm trying to understand something about myself or about the way the world works. And then by the time I'm done, it feels like I've created something new and I can just kind of let it go into the world. And it's a very kind of freeing, I wouldn't really say it's cathartic because it's not really about expressing all my emotions about that time, but it's turning it into something new. And I'll have to say too, it was a great excuse to do a ton of fun research when I was doing this book too. My husband and Sam got flown out and hiked up about 20 miles out of the Talkeetna Mountains to kind of get a sense of the terrain that people would be hiking out on. I got to go with our good friends and neighbors, the Brandells, to their hunting camp on Kodiak Island and spend 2 weeks in a very small tent observing brown bears. So it was incredible, and all that was kind of me processing what I was trying to say. All that time I'm thinking about the story that I'm trying to tell. So in ways there's an autobiographical character about it, but it's also something new and transformed, which is what I love about it.
So now you've gone through the book, and you've had maybe time to digest the process and pause for a moment? I'm not sure if you're beginning another one or have an idea for that, or you're shaking your head saying, "Oh, please."
No.
So how do you feel about it now? Now that it is essentially done and out in the world.
Well, it's such a strange hurry up and then slow down thing with the writing of the book, because the truth is the book was done. But the publishing world has their own schedule, so you're kind of at the whim of that, and it felt like an agonizing year to just be sitting here waiting to know how people were going to feel about it. And now I'm on the other side, and just now I'm starting to get reviews come in and things like that. So it is kind of a whirlwind time, and I am nervous. I'm excited, but I'm also nervous to share it with people. And I do get asked, which I'm honored that anyone cares whether I write another book or not, but the truth is it sounds absolutely terrible to me to write another book right now. But I'll confess, I feel that way every time. After The Snow Child, I said to my husband and daughters, I am never doing that again. And then after The Bride of the World, I said again, I'm never doing that again. And I'm saying it now, and they're laughing at me and saying, yeah, we'll see.
So you mentioned in various places that your husband and daughters did give you feedback along the way.
Yeah, they're hugely important. I mean, they're my first readers, Sam and Rory, who are both here today, and my oldest daughter, Grace, who's back in Montreal. They probably are sick to death of this book at this point, because I would work on writing a chapter and then I would immediately want to share it with them because I trust them so much. They're all, you know, our daughters are huge readers, and my husband knows more about the Alaska wilderness than anyone I know, and so I could check him on things, you know, what about this, would this happen? So yeah, they're a huge part of my writing process. And then once I get to a certain point, then it goes to my agent and then on to the editors, and then my poor family has to listen to me grumble about the changes that I have to make or the edits that I'm unhappy with. It's a long process, it really is. But in the end, I'm so grateful to have all that feedback from the editors and from my family, because I'm constantly having to kind of prove the worth of what I'm trying to do, and if it's not working, I need to fix it. So it's a good process, but it can be hard. It can.
Talk a little bit about the length of time from, if you think back when you first had the idea and you first began writing, how long did it take?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a long time, and I think the truth is it's a story that I've been kind of living with my whole life and trying to figure out how to talk about. But I think it was, you know, maybe a year or so after To the Bright Edge of the World came out that I started really thinking that maybe this story idea could work as sort of a retelling of a shape-shifting Beauty and the Beast, East of the Sun, West of the Moon, set in Alaska. But then it was a lot of trial and error. You know, I was trying different things, and I would send it to my agent and my editor, and they'd be like, yeah, this isn't quite working. And the truth is, I think I was a little afraid to write right into the heart of it. And there was a lot going on during that time, because you're thinking about, you know, this was during COVID, was happening while I was working on it. At one point, we were all home, my husband, both of our daughters, sitting at our dining room table, driving each other crazy while we were all trying to work on different things. And also, many of you know, I know a lot of you, you know, from here when I've grown up, both my mom and dad passed away while I was working on this book. And I was their primary caregiver. They both died of cancer separately, and it was a really hard time. But in ways, as hard as it is to say, when they were both gone, it freed me up a little more to tell the story a little more honestly. I didn't want to hurt them in any way. I love my parents very much, and I knew they would be able to see through some of the things I was saying. And so then it was sped up. The writing process sped up, and about the last year, I really was able to say what I wanted to say.
Okay. You read one piece. Do you have a second?
Yeah, let me see. If I marked another one in here. I think it'd be fun. I feel like Emmeline is sort of the most fun character in ways for me. So I'm going to read this part. Again, this is at the solstice party early on, and she's running around learning how to pour the beer from the keg and all the things that I did as a kid growing up in Alaska at these solstice parties. And she's 6 years old, and has a stick that she's lit in the campfire, and she's running around with it, and a grown-up says, you know, be careful with that. She runs over to the edge of the woods, and she says she liked standing there right at the edge. The air from the forest was quiet and shivery, but behind her she could hear the voices of the grown-ups, and when she looked back she could see the flames of the bonfire. She stood there so long that she thought maybe her willow stick had gone out. When she blew on the tip, though, the gray-black started to burn red again. She held it up in the air and waved it all around so the sparks would go up and be stars. That's when she saw one star all alone next to the moon. Starlight, star bright, first star I see tonight. I wish I may, I wish I might have this wish I wish tonight. You were only allowed one wish, but if you were smart, you could make a list inside of a wish. Like you could wish for everything frightening in the woods, the wild animals and witches and devil's clubs to all vanish altogether. But you had to think very carefully when you made a wish, because sometimes they came true and they were a trick that actually made you sad. Emmeline thought hard. What if there wasn't a single wild or scary thing in the woods? Maybe it wouldn't be so much fun to stand at the edge of the trees. As long as she could hear her mom laughing nearby and she could see the bonfire, she liked to think that a witch might be up in those tall branches looking back at her with golden eyes, or that a bear might be walking through the shadows on his quiet, clawed feet. Emmeline swirled the burning stick over her head around and around, the end glowing like her mom's cigarette at nighttime, and she wished only that she could be with her mom forever and ever.
So during this conversation, Eowyn, I've asked a whole bunch of questions. So in the few minutes we have before we turn questioning over to the audience, any last thoughts you'd like to leave with the people before they read the book?
Well, one thing I want to point out is that we have the gorgeous illustrations by Ruth Holbert in here. So you'll see that there are 3 botanical illustrations, and Ruth is here. She's going to be here to sign the books too. And I'm just so thrilled that these worked out, and they're very symbolic to each section, I feel like, and they're really pretty. They're just amazing. And you know, she did the illustrations and the map for the To Brides of the World, so I just feel so fortunate that we have this, I mean, so many great artists and creators in this community, and I'm so glad to have that be a part of the book. So to look for that. No, and I'm just glad to see you all here, and I look forward to visiting with you all while we're signing books. And yeah, and I'm very happy to answer any questions if anybody wants to. I know you haven't really had a chance to read it yet. I feel nervous as I see some of you reading, starting to open the pages. I think, oh, I hope you all like it. But yeah.
I think a big hand for Eowyn.
Oh.
So I think we have a microphone somewhere that was used, and I can go about and have people.
Yeah, I'm happy to. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to.
Questions. Do
but
we know
no pressure.
Where that
you don't have to think of a question.
Where did the microphone go? It flew away. Here it is. It's coming here. Okay. So if you have a question, raise your hand. I'll try to get this to you as best I can. I'm sure there's a question or more out there.
Oh,
so here we go.
Oh, it's Joanne. Yeah,
is it hard to write dialogue?
Yeah, the question is it hard to write dialogue? Yeah, I do find it difficult. I don't think it's one of the easiest things that come to me. I feel like I have certain strengths as a writer, like writing, about the natural world comes pretty easily to me. And dialogue is trickier. And I think what I have found is I really have to have the character fully developed. Once they're developed, then their voice comes through to me really strong. But sometimes that takes time. So I find myself going back, once I've written a lot of the book, going back and kind of tweaking the dialogue to get their voices right. And in this book, Sid was one that I wanted to get his. I've just known a lot of really intelligent people who can really talk, and I love these characters, and I wanted to kind of bring that apart in him. And so I had to push I'm someone who wants to keep my dialogue kind of short, and with him I had to make myself go longer because that's the kind of person he is, So yeah, it's a little bit of a challenge. It's a good question though.
Thank you.
Okay, Ralph, here we go.
Hi, thank you so much.
Thank you.
How do you handle consistency and discipline? Is there a time of day that's really good for you to write? Do you go when it feels right, or do you really discipline yourself?
Yeah, no, this is it's a question I'm really fascinated with. I have so many books about like writers' routines, how they do things, and I love reading the stories about what people do to try to get themselves in the flow, right? Because it's tricky to get yourself into that mindset of writing. And I've tried everything under the sun, I'll say. I mean, honestly, because especially this was, 7-8 years of intense writing. So sometimes I 500 words a day. And so then I would, the day would get wasted away. And I would see like, I have an hour before Sam and the girls are home. Like, I got to write these 500 words right now. And then ultimately what worked really well for me is we had the property that we bought up in Chickaloon had a tree house that was up in the trees, a beautiful tree house. And my husband lowered it down to the ground because the trees were dead that it was built around. my husband lowered, and it was our daughter's playhouse, where they were growing up. And we converted it into a writing shed for me. So it's within sight of the house, and technically the Wi-Fi router reaches that far, but I pretend that it doesn't, right? I say, oh, I don't have any Wi-Fi, I can't, all I have is a little wood stove, and I would bring, some tea or a snack. And there was something about that helped me leave, almost kind of metaphorically, all my own expectations, all the dishes that needed to be washed, or the emails I needed to answer, and that ended up being really critical for me. And so it didn't really matter what time of day, and especially because everything I was going through just personally and in the world, I just had to be adaptable and take the time when I had it. I was taking people to doctor's appointments, but then in the evening I'd be like, okay, now I'm going to go up and light my fire and write for a while, and that really helped a lot. But I feel like I'm always having to kind of come up with new ideas of how to make myself write. As much as I love it, I somehow it feels really hard. I know a lot of writers out here can probably relate to this feeling. That's great.
Okay.
Wait, there's one right there, Mike.
I'm going to try to throw this to it. Let me just, I don't think so. I'll come to this side, though, so we'll catch more people. Thank you. Here you go.
I'm always curious. I always ask authors when I get the chance to meet them, but how do you get started? As someone who one day dreams of writing, how do you get your ideas down into paper or computer? What do you do to get started?
I think that first step is the most intimidating in ways, like of actually just starting. And I'm stealing this from somebody, I wish I knew who, but someone talked about it as kind of like getting a wad of clay, people that work with clay, getting something onto your spinning the wheel to start molding, because at first you have nothing to work with. And so just getting those first things down can be really hard. So I've got a couple tricks. One is a lot of times I start like a notebook where I'm pasting it, taping in pieces of art that I see photos of, or lines from books that I find inspiring, or whatever, and starting a little journal that feels sort of like I'm not really committing to writing yet, but I'm collecting these ideas. And then the other thing I've tried before that has helped me sometimes is trying to write in like being the character and saying, I'm Birdie, and this is what I see about the world, and how I feel, and how I think. And that stuff might not even end up in the book, but it's just sort of a way to get in, because then you've got something to work with, and then you can be like, okay, I can start building off of this and building off of that. I don't know if that kind of makes sense. But it is intimidating, that first, but it's also the kind of the most fun time, because it's like everything's possible right then. And once you get to a certain point, you're kind of committed. Your characters are making decisions that maybe you didn't want them to, or whatever. You get far along in the process and you're set. And at that beginning part, it's all open and it's exciting. Good question, though. Oh, there's somebody in the back there.
Way in the back. We get that.
Hi, bear with me. I'm currently trying to write about Alaska. I find it so inspiring, just like you, and I think you're very inspiring. And I love how your books balance creativity and authenticity so well with the Alaskan experience. And I'm just curious, do you have a trick for how you do that? Like, how do you capture while also being so creative and keeping it?
Well, thank you very much. It's very kind of you to say, and I really appreciate it. I mean, the truth is I'm always terrified of getting something wrong. I'm not at all, I'm very, very humble about what I do and don't know about Alaska. So like, even though I had grown up, for example, I'd grown up having bears come through the yard, whatever, like I did not want to get something wrong. So I think maybe, what you feel like is authenticity, which is wonderful, is actually a lot of research of just trying to, and I think too of trying to like turn expectations on their head a little bit. Like I think that, there's ideas of what Alaska is that I want to turn upside down a little bit. I want to reverse the expectations because people do come to the page with a lot of ideas, especially people not from, right? So all of you, I'm afraid you're going to catch that I got something wrong. And there are people that are from other places that have these just really built up ideas of what Alaska is. I want to bring them down to the ground a little bit, I guess, But I think just writing about what's important to you, about, that's my best advice, is what you find returning to again and again in terms of themes, and then doing the research and keeping your fingers crossed that you didn't get something wrong. Great question, though.
I noticed this one is already out on audiobook.
Yeah.
Do you get any say in who does the reading?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the Random House was really wonderful, and they sent over several voices that I got to kind of choose from. And I'll tell a funny story. To the right edge of the world, my agent actually had it written into the contract that I would do the audio, or that I would get first choice. And I was terrified of this idea because there's a lot of words that I write that I don't know how to pronounce. So I was thinking, I'm going to mess something up, you know. But I was like, okay, I'll give it my best try. And so I did a couple recordings, and I sent it in to Little Brown. That was my publisher for that book. And they were so sweet, and they came back, and they were like, well, while you have a lovely reading voice, we would really like to hire professionals for this. And I was like, oh, phew, thank God, I did not want to do that. So yeah, they did and I'll say too, one of the things I was nervous about with that is some of you, if you've listened to audiobooks, you will catch things that are wrong. Probably the biggest things that I've caught wrong are having to do with guns, with ammunition and things. And I was there's several references to guns and ammunition in this. And I thought, I am never going to hear the end of this from my friends if they say something like a .22 pistol, you know. And so I made all these notes about how to say 375, not .375 or whatever, you know, and sent these notes. I was like, please, for the sake of my, you know, keeping my friends on my side, make sure you get these right. So, but yeah, I haven't listened to it yet, to be honest. I'm always a little nervous, but I've heard some good reports about the audio, but I haven't listened to the whole thing. I don't know that I could stand to listen to the whole thing. Great question, thank you. Well, I think, unless there's anybody else have any questions, I just hope when you come up to do the signing, I hope you feel free to talk with me a little bit. And I do want to say I am like a deer in the headlights when it comes to names. I know so many of you from so many different places, so please, you know, I think Lee might hand out some little sticky notes. So if you want it inscribed to someone, you can write. And even if it's inscribed to you, and I've known you since I was 5, please don't hesitate to write your name down, because I want to make sure I get the spelling right. And I'm going to forget your name. I know it's terrible, but it's just kind of being on the spot like that. So we'll have some sticky notes that we can hand out.
And I think Lee has papers.
Yep.
Write your note on paper before you get there.
Right.
And I hope you guys will enjoy. There's like refreshments, and come visit with me. And I really hope you all enjoy the book. And I'm just so grateful to see you all out here. Thank you so much for coming out. Thank you.